Welcome to the Storyteller's Moon, a place where every tale carries you into a world of passion, mystery, and unforgettable emotion. This story will pull you in, so find a quiet corner, let your heart open, and step into the journey. Bound by Secrets. Part 1. The Apartment. The rain had already claimed the street when Imani Carter dragged her last suitcase across the slick pavement. Evening light fractured in the puddles like broken glass, neon signs trembling in their reflection. She paused beneath the awning of Ashwood Manor, the umbrella above her head, a small, stubborn circle of defiance. The building's dark brick facade loomed, elegant and silent, as if it had watched centuries pass and learned to keep its secrets well. Her breath fogged in the cool air, the sound of her suitcase wheels over wet concrete, the only punctuation. She swallowed against the rising tide of doubt. A fresh start. That's what she had promised herself. Ashwood had been a stretch, financially and emotionally, but she needed it. She needed walls that didn't remember her worst days, a roof that wouldn't creak with memories, a space where she wasn't the fragile girl clawing her way out of hospital corridors and failed expectations. Imani squared her shoulders and pressed the buzzer. The lobby greeted her with warmth that didn't belong to the city outside. Amber light spilled across thick carpets, swallowing the sharp edges of noise. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and rain-soaked roses from the courtyard. She exhaled slowly, as if the building itself had offered a hand. "You must be Miss Carter." The voice came from behind the desk. Kenyon, the doorman, stood with the posture of someone who had seen storms but never bowed to them. His smile was professional, not perfunctory. "We've been expecting you. Apartment 12B. "Thank you," Imani murmured, taking the key fob he slid across. The plastic was heavy in her hand, weighted with more than circuitry. She moved toward the elevator, dragging her suitcase, when a shadow detached from the far corner. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and a man stepped out. Her heart stuttered. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black that wasn't loud but carried authority nonetheless. His presence filled the lobby without noise. His face was striking, dark eyes sharp, focused, a pale scar carving a deliberate line across his jaw. His stillness drew every detail toward him, like the center of gravity had shifted. "Miss Carter?" he said, and his voice was low, velveted with confidence. She blinked. "Yes?" "I'm Malik Daniels, the landlord." Landlord. The word should have made him distant, administrative. Instead, in his mouth, it felt like a vow. He stepped closer, measured, never hurried. "Kenyon will show you to your place, but I like to greet my tenants personally. Makes the building less anonymous." Imani nodded, throat dry. She hadn't expected this. Landlords usually hid behind offices, not silk-dark voices, and an aura that made air itself slow down. "Welcome to Ashwood," Malik said, eyes never leaving hers. "We keep our promises here." The elevator carried her to the 12th floor, Malik's presence lingering even after he stepped back into the lobby. She unlocked 12B with the fob, the door sighing open into a space that felt curated just for her. High ceilings, muted tones, windows stretched wide to let in the city's bruised skyline. A rug thick enough to swallow arguments. She set her suitcase down, touched the cool surface of the countertop, and closed her eyes. Home. Her phone buzzed. Naya? Naya, you made it in one piece? Imani, barely. It's unreal here, like walking into a novel. Naya, send pics? Imani, you'll accuse me of filters. Naya, her best friend and tether, never missed a chance to drag her back into laughter. Imani typed another message, then paused. She could still feel Malik's gaze, the way his voice had seemed less like words and more like intent. The apartment hummed with quiet. Too quiet. And then, faint, a low tenor of voices outside her door. Imani froze, leaned closer, the carpet muffled, but she heard it. Men murmuring, too close, too deliberate. She clutched her phone tight, pulse skipping. A knock. Single. Restrained. Her stomach lurched, but she forced her voice steady. Yes. Just routine. Kenyon's voice came through, calm, anchoring. Checking locks. She opened the door to find him standing there, reassuring as before. Malik was with him. Imani's lungs tightened. Malik didn't ask permission. He stepped inside as if the space recognized him. And yet, impossibly, it felt as though she had invited him. The lock works, Kenyon said smoothly, testing it. He gave her a small nod and withdrew, leaving her alone with Malik. The silence grew heavy, intimate. You'll get used to Ashwood's quiet, Malik said at last. It has a way of listening and keeping things safe. Her voice was softer than she intended. Safe is what I came for. His eyes held hers, steady, unflinching. Then you came to the right place. For a heartbeat, she believed him completely. Part 2. Promises in the hallway. The first full night in Ashwood was restless. Imani lay in her new bed, sheets crisp, the city's pulse muffled by the thick glass. But sleep would not settle. It circled like a stray dog, sniffing at her fear and anticipation. At 2 a.m, she woke to silence, so complete it felt unnatural. A silence that pressed, attentive as though the walls were waiting. She sat up, hand pressed over her racing heart, and whispered into the dark. I'm fine. The walls didn't argue. By morning, she tried to fold herself into normalcy. Coffee brewed in the small kitchen, the smell anchoring her to something ordinary. She unpacked the last box, stacked books on a shelf, hummed under her breath. But even then she felt it. The awareness of being watched. Not with malice. With precision. She jumped at the knock on her door. Package, Kenyon's voice announced, steady as always. She opened it to find a box she hadn't ordered. Inside, an umbrella, sleek, black, carved with an inscription along the handle. When it rains, you don't have to walk alone. Her throat tightened. She carried it inside, as if it might bruise if she set it down too fast. Her phone buzzed. Naya. Naya. How's the fairy tale castle? Imani. Someone just gave me an umbrella. Naya. A someone with a scar and a landlord title? I don't know. It was just here. Naya? Girl, please? No man just leaves poetry on a handle. That's a move. Imani, it's not like that. Naya, keep telling yourself that. Just don't drown before you learn to swim. Imani smiled, despite herself. Leave it to Naya to see through even stone walls. She set the umbrella near the door, unwilling to admit how comforted she felt by its presence. That evening, as she locked up to check the mail, Malik appeared at the far end of the hallway. He didn't hurry. He never hurried, but the space shifted around him. His sweater was simple, black again, but on him it looked like discipline, not laziness. "Miss Carter," he said, his tone an acknowledgement rather than greeting. "Mr. Daniels," she replied, trying to sound casual, failing. "You're settling in." "I'm trying," she admitted. His gaze flicked to the umbrella by her door. "Good." Heat crawled up her neck. "That was you." He didn't confirm. He didn't deny. His silence was the kind that left no space for lies. "I didn't need," she started. "You did," he said simply. "Ashwood pays attention. So do I." Something inside her wavered. She wanted to push back, to reclaim the ground of independence she had fought so hard for. But the truth was simpler. She had felt safer last night because the umbrella was there, even untouched. "Do you always take such interest in your tenants?" she asked, a sharper edge in her tone. His scar caught the light as he tilted his head. "Only the ones the building chooses." The answer unsettled her, threading both warning and promise into her chest. Later, in the laundry room, she overheard two women whispering. "The landlord's always watching," one said. "But better him than what's outside." The other nodded. "You won't find safer walls in this city." "But safety has a price." Imani folded her clothes slower than necessary, pretending not to listen. That night, she dreamed of keys that opened doors without numbers. The next afternoon, Malik's presence returned without fanfare. She was checking her mailbox when he appeared beside her, silent as breath. "Walk with me," he said. She hesitated, then followed him through the courtyard. Rain had returned, patient, insistent, the umbrella steady in his hand. He tilted it to cover her without asking, as if it was a foregone conclusion. "Do you like music?" he asked suddenly. Caught off guard, she nodded. "I teach piano. When I can." Something sparked behind his eyes. Not surprise, but recognition, like he'd expected that answer. "The building has a piano room. You'll use it." She blinked. "That's not a request?" "It's an observation." Her laugh came out nervous, sharp. "You really don't waste words, do you?" "No," he said, turning to look at her fully. "I don't waste anything." The rain curved around them, caught by the umbrella. She felt caught too, but not trapped. Shielded. When they reached the far end of the courtyard, Malik paused. "Ashwood has rules," he said. "Simple ones. Respect the walls. Keep what you see here inside these walls, and when you need safety, claim it. Do you understand?" Imani swallowed hard. "I think so." "You'll learn," he said, and for a moment his eyes softened. Not enough to undo the steel, just enough to remind her steel could warm if it chose. They returned to the lobby in silence. Kenyon inclined his head, the smallest bow of acknowledgement, as though she had just passed a test she hadn't studied for. Upstairs, she set the umbrella back in its place and stared at the inscription again. When it rains, you don't have to walk alone. She wanted to scoff, to roll her eyes at the romanticism. Instead, she whispered, "Maybe I don't." The walls seemed to hear her. Part 3. Rooms without numbers. By the end of her first week, Imani had learned that Ashwood didn't breathe like other buildings. It exhaled when it wanted, held its breath when it needed. Packages arrived without being left. Strangers drifted in and out as if they belonged. And the walls kept conversations that weren't meant to echo. On Thursday, she watched a delivery driver pause mid-step in the lobby, turn on his heel, and walk away without ringing a bell. By Friday, she'd heard laughter above her ceiling when no one lived in the unit above. She told herself she wasn't unsettled. But she double-checked her lock 3 times that night. Saturday morning, she woke to find the umbrella leaning against her door again. The inscription, "When it rains, you don't have to walk alone," was etched deeper into her mind than she wanted to admit. Her phone buzzed. Naya. Naya, you good? Imani. This building is weird, like it has a memory. Naya, as long as it doesn't have hands. Imani. Stop. Naya, seriously though, if your landlord shows up with another umbrella, I'm staging an intervention. Imani laughed, relief breaking through her unease. But the laugh didn't last long. That evening, when she stepped out to grab groceries, 2 men leaned against the brick wall across the street. They weren't neighbors. Their eyes lingered too long, searching, cataloging. She felt their gaze all the way to the store. By the time she returned, her chest was tight with dread. And then Malik appeared. He didn't approach with speed. He didn't need to. The men stiffened at the sight of him, like prey remembering the shape of its predator. Malik spoke a few quiet words Imani couldn't hear. Whatever he said was enough. The men scattered into the night without argument. Imani clutched her grocery bag like a shield. Malik's eyes flicked to her face, assessing, steady. "You're all right," he said. It wasn't a question. "Who were they?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "People who thought they could take liberties with my building," Malik replied. His tone didn't rise, but it carried the finality of a slammed door. "They won't be back." Something inside her trembled. Fear, yes, but also relief. Sharp and unexpected. Later that night, her buzzer hummed. "Miss Carter," Kenyon's calm voice said through the intercom, "you're expected upstairs." 2:00. She frowned. Upstairs where? The penthouse. Her pulse jumped. "And if I say no?" "Then the invitation will wait for another day," Kenyon said. But there was something in his voice that told her this wasn't random. When 2:00 arrived, she found herself in the elevator anyway, umbrella in hand, though the sky was clear. The button for 12 glowed, then flickered to reveal a square with no number. She hesitated, heart racing, then pressed it. The elevator rose higher than she thought Ashwood had floors. The doors opened on silence. And then, light. The penthouse was unlike anything she'd expected. Dark wood floors, glass walls that made the city stretch endless, shelves of books worn from use, not display. Wealth was here, yes, but not for showing off. It felt curated for privacy, not spectacle. There were 6 people already gathered: an older woman pouring tea, a man in a tailored suit, 2 women with tablets, a violin playing faintly from a back room. And, at the center, Malik. He walked toward her, unhurried, eyes steady. "Imani," he said, her name low, like it belonged to him for the moment. "Malik," she managed, because his first name tasted like something she shouldn't keep to herself. He introduced her to the others. "This is Auntie Ruth," he said of the older woman. "She reminds me of the rules when I forget them." Auntie Ruth took Imani's hands, squeezing them in both of hers. Her eyes were sharp, cutting through pretense. "You're clear," she said, "and protective." Good. Instinct can't be taught. The man in the suit was Omar. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "I'm counsel," he said simply. The women with tablets nodded politely, but never stopped scanning the room. Imani realized they weren't assistants. They were guards. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't a casual invitation. This was initiation. Malik gestured toward a painting on the far wall, the city skyline, but distorted, bent as if seen through rain. He pressed his hand against the frame. A click answered, and a door opened where there hadn't been one before. Imani's breath caught. "Rooms without numbers," Malik said quietly, only for her. "This is where safety lives. And wakes, if called." Inside, she glimpsed a narrow chamber. A long table, 6 chairs, water glasses on a sideboard, a single black and white photo on the wall. People looking skyward at something unseen. The air inside felt heavier, private, holy. She stepped closer, but he stopped her with a hand gently raised. "Not yet," he said. "Curiosity is safer when it doesn't have to break in. But some doors are only meant for necessity." "Why show me at all?" she asked. His eyes deepened, dark and unwavering. "Because the building already chose you. I'm only catching up." Before she could answer, Auntie Ruth's voice rang out. "Malik, decisions." He closed the door with 2 fingers, seamless, invisible. And then he returned to the table, speaking with the weight of someone who made choices people lived and died by. Imani stood on the edge of it all, tea in hand. She hadn't realized was there, watching him move like the world bent around his gravity. Later, on the terrace, the city's lights flickering below, Malik stood close enough that she could feel his presence shield her from the wind. "Are you going to tell me what you actually do?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "I build perimeters," he said, "around people and places that can't afford the wrong surprise. And when the surprise comes anyway." His mouth tilted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then I give it a better reason to leave." Her laugh came shaky, caught between nerves and awe. "That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." he replied. They stood in silence, the city below them, the rain threatening again. Malik's phone buzzed. He glanced at it once, typed quickly, and slipped it back into his pocket, attention returning wholly to her. Dinner, he said. Not a demand, a possibility. I can't, she said softly. Not now, then, he replied, unbothered. But not never. The elevator carried her down, her reflection fractured in its mirrored walls. She clutched the umbrella like an anchor, whispering to herself, "What are you walking into, Imani?" Her phone buzzed the second she stepped into her apartment. Naya? Spill. Imani. He has doors that don't exist. Naya. Girl, that's not a man. That's a plot twist. Imani sank onto the couch, laughing through the knot in her chest. Above her ceiling, faint but certain, a piano note rang out, low, steady. A sound that felt like a promise. Part 4. The choice we make. Sunday began with a quiet that felt deliberate, like the building had drawn a soft line around the day and written rest in the margins. Imani watered the jade plant and steadied the picture frame she'd set on the bookshelf. Her and Naya at the beach, hair wild, both of them laughing as if nothing bad had ever learned their names. She tried to journal and managed 2 lines before her pen stalled in air. New place, new rules. The walls keep secrets. So do I. By afternoon, she'd set the pen down and gone walking, the umbrella hooked over her forearm, though the sky was undecided. She liked the city just before evening, when storefronts yawned closed and night hadn't quite remembered itself. The noodle shop on the corner steamed up its little windows. The man inside ladled broth like a blessing. She bought a carton and stood under the awning while rain started its patient tap. Her phone buzzed. Naya? You alive or swept away by Mr. Ashwood Manor, Imani? Both can be true? Naya? Okay, poet Naya. Remember, want is not the same as need. But sometimes it's how you find it. Imani smiled into the noodle steam and texted back a heart. She tugged the umbrella open, stepped into rain that had decided to mean it, and let the street guide her back toward Ashwood. 2 men peeled off the brick near the storefront, 2 doors down from the building. They moved like people who thought sidewalks belonged to them. Imani Carter, the taller one said, tasting her name like a test he'd already cheated on. Her fingers tightened on the handle of the umbrella. Do I know you? Not yet, the other said, smile thin. We're friends of a friend? Your landlord owes conversation. You can help. Her heart pitched. The voice had the same off-key she heard sometimes in the clinic, the one that pretended concern while choosing cruelty. I can't help you, she said, and hated the tremor she tasted on can't. No, see? The taller one said, stepping closer. That's the wrong answer. Before she could swallow fear into something braver, the night shifted. It didn't go silent. It went obedient. Step away. Malik's voice didn't lift. It didn't need to. He walked out of the building like the door had been expecting him. No coat, sweater black, hands empty, but not harmless. The air around him learned new manners. Mr. Daniels, the shorter man said, mock polite. We were just introducing ourselves. You were trespassing. Malik's gaze touched each face and dismissed it. Leave. The tall one smirked, but his eyes betrayed the math in his head. Weight of 2 versus weight of 1. Miscalculated. We know about your rooms, he said, letting rooms hang like a dare. You think that door keeps the world out? It keeps you out, Malik said, and the sentence landed like a lock engaging. Walk away, while I'm still allowing walking. A beat of held breath. The men looked at Imani as if to recruit her witness for a script she hadn't agreed to. Then the taller one laughed in a way that wanted to be brave and wasn't. Another time, he said, and they peeled into the rain, like ink in water. Imani let out a breath she hadn't admitted to holding. Her knees didn't buckle because she asked them nicely not to. Malik was beside her before she swayed, 2 fingers at her elbow, exactly enough touch to convince gravity to be reasonable. You're all right, he said. Am I? The laugh that escaped was thinner than she wanted. Because I just discovered Ashwood isn't just thick walls and polite rugs. It's whatever that was. Malik angled the umbrella over both of them, without ceremony, widening the circle until she could breathe again. Ashwood is a perimeter, he said. People I protect meet here because the city won't let them meet anywhere else. Sometimes that attention attracts eyes. Those eyes get redirected. By you, she said. By us, he corrected, and the US sat somewhere between humility and accurate accounting. But yes, I built this so the wrong kind of surprise has a longer commute. And what does that make you? She asked, voice small, only because the truth had shown up taller than expected. Landlord? Bodyguard? Something I shouldn't name out loud? A man who makes it possible for people like you to sleep, he said, and it should have sounded like arrogance. It didn't. It sounded like work that had learned how to be bone. And a man who does what's required, so those who'd hurt you keep choosing other doors. The rain thickened, drumming its steady lesson on awnings and asphalt. Somewhere behind them, Kenyon's shape occupied the lobby air like an answer. Why show me any of it? Imani asked, throat tight. Why the door upstairs? Why the umbrella? Why invite me to the edge of a thing you keep hidden from everyone else? Because you noticed anyway, he said simply. Because you are not afraid of the truth, only of being left out of it. And because I won't lie to you. She stared at his scar, at the way it made everything about his face look like choice. And if I don't want this? She asked. If I want to be just a woman in 12B who waters a plant and goes to work and doesn't learn how many rooms a building can hide? Then I keep you safe anyway, he said. No gap between thought and vow. You'll always have the option not to open a door. The honesty of it made something in her loosen, an ache. Want knotted with warning. The umbrella's circle felt like a definition. She stepped into it fully until her shoulder brushed his. Then show me on my terms, she said. Not because I'm dragged. Because I decide. For the first time since she'd met him, the control he wore let itself soften. A smile flashed and hid. Tomorrow, he said. On your terms. A shout snapped the street in half. Not angry, urgent. Kenyon's voice from the lobby. Malik? The umbrella tilted as Malik turned. In 2 strides, they were inside. The lobby's warmth closed around them like a hand. Omar stood at the far end, phone still in his fist. Auntie Ruth behind the desk, where no one ever sat. The look on her face, a weather report. They pushed a meeting forward, Omar said, eyes already moving like pieces on a board. Not our choice. They're insisting on neutral ground, or no ground. They're already in the car. Auntie Ruth cut a look at Imani that wasn't unkind. Child, you can wait upstairs if you like. It'll be louder here. Imani's ribs remembered the men on the sidewalk. Her heartbeat did a little sprint it pretended was cardio. She looked at Malik. He wasn't asking her anything with his face. He was giving her the time to decide. I'm not hiding behind a plant, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in it. But I won't get in the way. You won't, Malik said, as if facts had heard her too. Stay to the left when we enter. If I lift my hand, you stop moving. If I say your name, you look at me and no one else. His voice gentled. You can walk away at any time. She nodded. Okay. They took the elevator to the floor that did not exist. The panel lit at Malik's touch. The car hummed through the building's bones like a patient instrument. The doors opened on the penthouse corridor. The painting's frame accepted Malik's palm. The black door sighed open. The room without numbers breathed them in and made space at the table that wasn't there a minute ago. Imani had expected men with loud ties and louder threats. Instead, 2 people entered who looked like arguments dressed in good tailoring. A woman with steel in her posture and grief, buried poorly behind expensive eyes. A man with a jaw that had been clenched since college. They sat without being asked. That was the rule of rooms like this. If you've been allowed in, you know how to sit. Malik didn't introduce Imani. He didn't hide her either. He took the head of the table the way gravity takes a river. Omar slid notes toward him. Auntie Ruth poured tea with theaterless precision. The first 10 minutes were nothing human would call conversation. Positions stated, phrases that sounded like questions but weren't. The man tried to lean on threat. The room ate it. The woman used the word safe 4 times, as if testing whether it meant the same thing in different sentences. Imani watched the way Malik answered without extraneous syllables, the way his attention weighted a person so they felt seen and therefore obliged to behave. It shifted when the woman's voice cracked mid-sentence. Not much. A fracture hairline thin. If Imani hadn't spent 2 years in a clinic listening for small sounds that meant help without saying help, she might have missed it. May I? Imani asked softly, not to the woman, but to Malik. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. Yes, he said. Imani leaned forward, half an inch, just enough to register presence without turning the room toward her. You don't sound like someone who trusts rooms, she said to the woman. Neither do I most days. But this one isn't asking you to trust it. It's asking you to try speaking where you won't be punished for honesty. The woman blinked, anger and relief colliding. He took my brother, she said, each word a pebble dropped into deep water. He took him because I said no to a deal that would have bled us forever. And now he wants to meet to prove he can be reasonable. Her laugh was a slice. Reasonable? What do you want to leave this table with? Imani asked, voice level. Not what he wants. What do you want? Name it. The woman's eyes shone, but did not spill. My brother. Breathing. And an end to this without anybody else being buried. Malik spoke then, not to contradict, but to finalize. Your brother will be returned after this meeting, unharmed. He didn't say I promise. He didn't decorate it. He laid it down like a plank between cliffs, and then stood on it to show it would hold. And after? The man pressed, suspicion doing what it knows how to do. How do we know you won't come for us when we leave this room? You don't, Malik said. You only know that I came here so no one else would have to die for your pride, and that I prefer to spend my nights building perimeters, not digging holes. Silence suspended itself long enough to matter. Then Auntie Ruth, without looking up, said, "Tea's getting cold." It turned the room human again. The woman nodded once, the smallest bow to a law that had preceded all of them. Fine, she said. Neutral ground. We'll finish it here. What followed was choreography more than conversation, terms outlined, paper prepared that meant less than the fact that everyone at the table would remember today if they tried to forget it later. Omar translated anger into clauses. The man tried to posture once more. Kenyon appeared without having been called and put a cup of water in front of him with the kind of gentleness that reminds a person what good hands feel like. When the signatures were written, when the edges of the emergency had been rounded so they wouldn't cut anyone else tonight, Malik stood. It wasn't dismissal. It was closure. Kenyon will walk you to the car, he said. When you arrive where you are going, your brother will be waiting. If he isn't, text this room. We'll already be there. The man almost argued, because some men can't let a scene end without taking a swing at its last line. The woman placed 2 fingers on his wrist. The argument forgot how to be a fist. They left with dignity they hadn't arrived with. The door sealed itself into paint again. Imani let out a breath she'd been storing in the back of her lungs. The room, relieved of duty, felt like a church after the choir files out. Holy, tired, still humming. Auntie Ruth fixed Imani with a look that contained approval and warning in equal parts. You speak soft, she said. You cut deep. Useful combination. Dangerous, if you forget which is which. I won't, Imani said, meaning it. Omar gathered papers into a stack that would live in a safe, that would live behind a wall, that had learned how not to exist. We'll confirm delivery in 20, he said to Malik. Malik nodded, then turned to Imani with an attention that made the rest of the room fall politely away. You didn't have to be in this room, he said. I wanted to be, she answered, sudden heat behind her ribs. And I'm not fragile. No, he said. You're not. He studied her face, not mapping it for weakness, but memorizing it for reasons she felt in her bones. Come. He led her not back to the elevator, but through a narrow hall that opened onto the terrace. Rain had cleaned the city's edges, lights sharpened, streets ran like ink. Wind should have chilled her. It didn't. Malik stood half a pace closer than necessary again, and the cold changed its mind. You asked me what I am? He said. I'm the man this building requires. That work has taken things I can't get back. But it's also given me a certainty I don't apologize for. He drew a breath that pulled the night with it. I won't decide for you. I will decide for us when danger tries to think first. Imani looked at him. Really looked. The scar, the eyes that did not flinch, the hands that rested easy when they were empty and devastating when they weren't. Power, yes, but not the kind that grows by making others small. The kind that built a table and then invited witnesses. What if I say yes to this? She asked, and her voice didn't shake. Yes to you? To us? What changes? Very little and everything, he said, and the honesty stole the last argument she'd been holding like spare change. You keep your keys, your work, your voice. I keep my perimeter. When it rains, you don't walk alone. When the city forgets its manners, I remind it. When I forget I'm a man and not a mission, you remind me. Something behind her sternum gave. Not breaking, opening. My terms, she said, because she had them, and because wanting doesn't erase the right to name them. No lies, no decisions for me when I'm capable of making them. If you need to be a wall, be one. But don't build a cage and call it care. He didn't flinch. Agreed, he said, and it sounded like already true. My terms, when I say your name in a room that isn't safe, you look at me. When I tell you to stop moving, you stop. I won't abuse those moments, but I won't negotiate with danger. She nodded. Agreed. Below them, somewhere no one else on the terrace could see, a car door shut. Malik glanced at his phone. The single word on his screen registered in his face, delivered. He showed it to her as if she had been the one who needed the proof, and maybe she had. Good. Auntie Ruth's voice carried softly from inside, satisfied that the universe had behaved for once. Imani tugged the umbrella closer to her side. Rain ticked at the edge of the overhang, waiting to be invited back into significance. You ever go anywhere without being a perimeter? She asked, a little smile sneaking into the end of the sentence. Sometimes I go to the piano room and try to remember a song I've never known, he said. She blinked. You play? Very badly, he said, and finally, laughed. A low, surprised sound like a secret had learned to stretch. Teach me to be less afraid of your doors, she said. Teach me to be less afraid of mine, he answered. They stood there a long minute, the city running without them, the building content to hold them without demanding a performance. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't step away. The umbrella rested between them, like a symbol that had done its job and could be forgiven for being obvious. Later, downstairs, the elevator stopped at 12, as if it had always been their floor. He walked her to her door and didn't try to walk through it. Good night, Imani, he said, and the word night in his mouth lost its old teeth. Good night, Malik, she said, and placed her palm flat against his chest. Just once. The quietest claim. His heart answered her touch, like a truth that didn't need translating. Inside 12B, the room received her as if it had been waiting for this exact arrangement of breath. She set the umbrella in its corner, the inscription catching lamplight. When it rains, you don't have to walk alone. She texted Naya, Imani. I chose it. Him. US. On my terms. Naya, I'm proud and nosy. Mostly proud. Imani, tell you everything tomorrow. Naya, sleep. You're safe. Imani climbed into bed, the city softened to velvet beyond the glass. Above, a single piano note sounded, hesitant, faithful, and another followed. Not quite right, then closer. She smiled into the dark. Ashwood held its breath like a promise, and exhaled like a blessing. When the rain returned, it tapped the window, not like a warning, but like someone letting you know they'd arrived. She closed her eyes and let the weather keep time with the newest thing her life had learned. Safety could be a perimeter and a person and love, when you negotiated it honestly. Could be a door you opened yourself and then chose each time to walk through. Not alone. Never alone. End. Thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Moon. If this story touched you, scared you, or kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps the stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next one with you under the moonlight. Until then, may your nights be safe and your dreams unforgettable.